did that rule of monophyly or law of monophyly break down?
You said three different things here. You said you have seen single-celled animals produce, or single-celled, I think you said animals, produce multicellular animals in the laboratory.
Wrong. I will clarify that again. Okay. By definition, animals are multicellular.
There are no such thing as singular cell animals.
Right? You can't have a single-celled animal. By definition, when you have multicellular eukaryotes form together and then also form an internal digestive tract, then you can classify it as an animal.
So you're talking about a colony of cells that has a digestive tract, and this is are you saying this is evidence?
If it has an internal digestive tract, then yes. If we're talking about a colony of eukaryotes with an internal digestive tract, that would meet the criteria for the character-based criteria for what we call an animal. However, in phylogeny, it's based on your ancestry, not necessarily your characters. For example, whales and snakes are still classified as tetrapods, even though neither of them have 4 legs anymore, and many of them are not even adapted for life on land anymore because evolutionary ancestry. Likewise, a human would be defined as having a brain of a certain capacity and having 2 arms, 2 legs, and so forth. But people are born without any number of these criteria. We would not say they were not human anymore, because we base the classification on their ancestry, so they are still human even if they're born without those characteristics.
So all the ancestry from here on out will, like for example, humans, they're all going to still be humans. They'll all still be mammals. They'll still be all eukaryotes.
No matter how much they change.
No matter how long down the line. Now, Kent has made the claim, though, that for some reason the law of monophyly has broken down at some point, and I'm not sure if he's answered that yet. Where that broke down.
He hasn't answered anything yet. He hasn't answered what a kind is. He's the one who keeps mixing them. Well, I keep saying they bring forth. Yeah, he keeps going back to the definition of species as if that were the definition of kinds, and he keeps excusing that when he describes a kind, every kind as he has been doing, like the squirrel kind and the bat kind, those are the squirrel clade and the bat clade. He doesn't understand there's a difference between kind and clade, and the difference is that a kind began with a special creation. He hasn't shown that is possible. He's damn sure hasn't shown that there's any evidence of that, and he hasn't been able to dismiss the evidence that there is for evolution. All he can do is insist that it is a religion when it clearly, absolutely, certainly is not.
Now, Ken, you said the original. You think there's like 7,000 original kinds. Now you saying those are the created kinds? 7,000 original created kinds.
Let's start with that as a working hypothesis. There were 7,000 created kinds. This is only of animals. This is not insects. This is not plants. This is not fish. Animals on land in whose nostrils was the breath of life that had to go onto Noah's Ark. I don't know how many kinds of created plants there were or kinds of created fish. That would be a different story. But let's start with the working hypothesis that there are original 7,000 created kinds. They have now diversified into millions of species. I agree. Speciation happens. I do not think that's any evidence for evolution. I think the speciation is always limited, very limited, in many ways. And I don't think there's any way Aron's going to come up with any answer to how we get new information. For instance, this single-celled creature that develops a colony and has a digestive tract now has to develop wings and the ability to fly. This is adding information that they're just. I'd love to hear his answer. Where does the additional information for this cell come from, or this cluster of cells, to learn to fly, to learn to reproduce, to learn to eat, to learn to seek out food, to learn to avoid, unpleasant conditions, be it temperature or sunlight or whatever? There are thousands of features that today's animals have. Obviously, the ability to move about, to seek a mate, to seek food, to ingest and digest food, and this had to come from a single cell. It looks to me like additional information is being added. Where does this come from? Which is, I think, another giant problem for those who believe, capital B, believe in evolution.
I'm guessing by the space that I'm allowed to speak in.
Oh, sure, yeah, please do, yes.
Okay, so you said that what you proposed just now, which again is you've just expressed how you don't understand what you're talking about, but everybody listening to this has gathered that much by now.
Oh, okay.
You said that this would be what you propose is a working hypothesis. And what actually makes it either working or a hypothesis? What experiment could we use to vindicate this idea if it were true, or falsify it if it is not?
Okay, let's see if we can cross an elephant and a pine tree. Let's get the sperm or egg of an elephant and the pollen from a pine tree, and see if we can get them to produce something. Or let's look at let's see, can they the Bible says they will bring forth after their kind. If we start with 7,000 kinds of animals, can we get them to interbreed? You think it's possible for a bat to interbreed with a bird?
Are you saying that God created a first pair of bats and also created a first pair of birds? Is that your answer to my question?
I don't know how many first pairs of birds there were. Maybe there were 50 pairs.
Okay, so
of
that
birds.
is not an answer to my question, then.
I am answering your question.
But you're answering that you do not have an answer. Is literally what your answer is. You don't have the answer.
My answer is there are probably many original created kinds of birds. I don't think you can put all birds. Okay. You put birds in the same kind as pine trees.
Okay, yeah, they're both eukaryotes. So your experiment by taking the egg of an animal, a mammal, and combining that with a pine tree, having no recollection to the fact that we're talking about animals on one side and plants on the other, you think that this verification of evolutionary law somehow refutes evolutionary law and instead supports the magic imaginary friend theory?
Well, let's avoid the pine tree then, if that's your stumbling block. Let's take an elephant and a whale.
I'm not the one with the stumbling block here. Let me help
You're
you
not?
with this. I can clarify this question a little bit better. We'll just do it as a short series of yes or no. Are mallards related to pockards, wood ducks, and muscovies?
Don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know how many kinds.
God could have created separate kinds for pockards. Pockards could be a kind unto themselves, even though they're all ducks.
As I said,
so
I don't
he didn't
know
create a duck kind. And ducks and chickens are in the galliform kind, and galliforms are also with the neonates and paleonates in the bird kind, along with uornates and ichthyornis and enantiornis and a number of others, and Archaeopteryx, I guess, as well. At what point do we have a created kind? Where is the evidence to indicate the possibility of a creator?
Well, where is your evidence that a duck kind and a whale kind are related?
Well, the fact that you can't define what a kind is probably the first problem. But the fact that they are both within the same parent categories, they are both animals, for example.
That proves we're related. And plus don't forget...
It proves they're still the same kind, doesn't it? Well, unless we go with what the actual definition of a kind is, which is where the clade begins with a special creation. So are you saying that God created a certain group of ducks and then created another certain group of ducks, and he created a kind of mallards and a kind of pockards, that he created every different species individually? Is that what a kind is? Or is it something larger? Is it a larger category than that?
You just used the word kind and species in the same sentence, and yet you said you don't do that. Go back.
And I distinguished them. I did, because I don't mix them the way you keep accusing. You do. You're the one that keeps saying if they bring forth, which is the definition of species, not kind. I keep correcting you on this, but you do not correct yourself. That's why after 20 years, you still repeat the idea that I'm supposed to believe that we came from a rock, even though I've seen a dozen people correct you on this very point, and you've never fixed it.
It doesn't need fixed. Evolution does teach.
Yeah, nobody believes. No evolutionary biologist, nobody promoting evolutionists believes we came from a rock. Nobody. That is a lie on your part, which you have never corrected.
I can say, and if I can interject, if you don't mind, I've actually brought the same thing up to you a couple of years ago. But I have never seen any evolutionary biologist or anybody advocate that evolution teaches that we came from a rock. I have only heard that from creationist source. So can I ask you, do you have any citation that we can look at from a some kind of evidentialism from a evolutionary textbook that says evolution claims we came from a rock?
I think I showed very clearly from dozens of textbooks. You tell me.
You didn't answer the question at all. You showed not one textbook that supports that argument ever in your life. Not just tonight. Never.
Aron, this original cell that you say became the ancestor of the whales and the pine trees, what did that come from?
You have to assume that it's the ancestor because we have other lines of evidence that draw that. Right now, we're only going to right now we're only talking about the facts and the possibilities as we see them.
Yeah, which textbook has that in there? Because I've asked that question before, actually, and I still haven't got an answer. And I'm curious. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible here. I really would like an answer to that question because it's been brought up before, and I've had other creationists say, there are textbooks that say, according to evolutionary theory, we evolved from a rock. And I have yet to find a single textbook that says that. If you have one, I honestly would like to look for that, and I will read that.
There's not a textbook that even allows for that.
I am calling it up right now. But in the meantime, while I get this in my PowerPoint, I have like 10,000 slides now. Do you believe this original cell came from a primordial soup, which came from the in the oceans or a nice warm pond or something like Darwin? Where did this original cell come from? Where did the first living cell come from?
I did a video on this also simply titled Abiogenesis, which is set as an instructional material for middle school students, in which I explain that I don't necessarily subscribe to just the primordial soup. That's a possibility, I suppose. There are a number of overlapping ones. There are more than a dozen different processes that are distinctly different from each other, and none of them qualify as the evolutionary processes, but which also any number of them could be true at the same time. Almost all of them could be true at the same time.
Okay, so I'll ask the question once again. Where did the first cell come from? What do you think? What does Aron think is the answer to where did the first living cell come from?
As was explained in the video when I answered this the first time, giving it again, let's see, how can I paraphrase this? I believe in I think the RNA first example is probably the best supported. I think everybody universally agrees with that.
Either the RNA world hypothesis or some kind of related to
the
that.
Primordial soup was it was a good one for its time.
That's back in the 70s.
Yeah, but RNA first appears to be it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with the cell, because that's what he's asking about, is he wants to go to he wants to skip a whole bunch of different stages and go just to the first cell. And then we're talking about hypercycles, where you have a phospholipid bilayer, which already includes replicative RNA, not DNA yet. But I think before we can classify as life, we don't necessarily have to have DNA yet, where it's enough to just have RNA.
Self-replicating RNA.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, now, and where did this RNA come from? You agree? I think we both agree that.
Why
RNA
are we talking about that instead of evolution, which is the thing we were supposed to be discussing tonight?
Yeah, and the question that was posed.
You asked me a clear question. Where is the evidence that you believe you came from a rock? I'm trying to get. I think if you guys would admit it, this RNA had to come from the water somewhere, from minerals in the water. And the minerals came from a rock.
Kent,
and the planet Earth cooled down.
That's actually not the hypothesis, Kent. But Kent, the question I've asked this before, and I know Aron's frustration on this quite well. For evolution to occur, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, Aron, but for evolution, you have to have genetics. You have to have genes. You have to have a change of allelic frequency in a population.
But also to address his misunderstanding about this, when there was the Murchison chondrite that landed in Australia in 1969, which was we would all accept that was a rock, but it was a rock that was also found to contain many different dozens, I think, different amino acids and some unknown chemicals of extreme complexity, but they were not themselves rock. So at 0 point in our ancestry were we ever descended from a rock. Nobody, nowhere, never, ever thought this. You have been wrong your whole life about this. Fix that error.
So this meteorite that was found in Australia is your answer. It contained things. In other words, life came from outer space. Is that what you're trying to imply?
Wrong. What I was explaining is the distinction between the amino acids and the rock matrix they were found in. They are not rock themselves, nor were we.
Okay, would you tell me, are amino acids made of the 92 naturally occurring elements?
Being a part of a natural occurring element does not in any sense make you a rock. If you freeze oxygen, would you call that a rock?
Well, a supercooled crystal like ice, I guess, or I'm not sure if that's...
We're talking about oxygen right now.
Yeah, I don't know if...
frozen hydrogen. Can you freeze hydrogen to make it into a rock?
You're diverting to a different topic now.
The same topic. The same topic you would like to divert away from. But yeah, it's if we cannot ever refer to these things as rocks simply because they're frozen, because they're not actually minerals, then we cannot call them rocks. At no point ever were we rocks. No evolutionary biologist ever thought that we came from a rock. Yeah. Why would you believe something so dumb as that evolutionary biologists think we came from